Dr. Christopher Kevin Slaton, and welcome to this introduction on the brain's body learning system. I am the author of Education and Science, The Brain's Body, Help to Improve Brain, Body, and Sense Events. And before we go into the brain's body learning system, I want to introduce you to the BASE, which is a community-based learning system, because we all experience life inside the home, having the experience of learning inside a school, thinking inside a neighborhood, and responding in the workplace. But what this is an experience-based learning field, because we all have shared some sort of experiences in it. When we talk about the brain, it's easier for us to ground practice of the brain's body learning system when you know the fields of engagement that we're testing as we move through examinations of how to improve sensory and receive path functioning. So that's number one. And so when we move forward, we're talking about education and science. You should get the book, because it's very, very significant in the area of sense and receive path functions, but in terms of how to reset a sense and receive path that has been upset by major life events in a home, school, neighbor, workplace network. And we're talking about brain, body, and sense events that have to be coordinated so that when you're working with someone who has been impacted, you know what you're trying to do. You're trying to reset the sense and receive paths to organize brain, body, and sense coordination, right? And I'm going to talk about that as we continue to move forward. So one of the ways that we know that our systems work, now if you have a measurement, it's based upon contact interaction with a child that's been upset or disadvantaged. So it's either mild, moderate, or severe is the way that you would score it. We have those classification systems that start on page 300 inside Education Science and the Best Interest of the Child. But what we're talking about is identification of troubled, difficult, and high need variables that you need to assess to determine the functionality of a person's sense and receive path function in terms of how they process emotion, thought, and reflection, how forward feed sends emotion, thought, and reflection deal with the complexities of social cognitive data that's impacting the sense path. So I'll talk about that a little more as we move forward. This is a system, it's all relative. Your role, your function as a parent, teacher, health and human service professional is that we offer the brain's body learning system in combination with the brain's body showcase. And so everything you're learning, we are able to provide safe places for you to practice developing that knowledge base that you're learning as you move through the brain's body learning system, and you are able to test our community-based learning systems, right? So we'll come back to that a little later on, but I wanted to make that clear. Now, next step, everything that we do begins with shared experiences. Community-based learning is another one, but now we're talking about the breath of life, because it's critical when you're dealing with probable substance-related disorders or probable abuse, neglect that has created block in the sense and receive path. So we call that sense or receive damage, right? Because the functions of energy and the flow of action and feelings isn't coordinated. So a person's more apt to be troubled or appear to be troubled or difficult to handle. So we want you to understand is that's why we start with the breath of life, because when we do the assessment, we want to have a base. So we always want to know what that experience was when you came into life. And those experiences of how you are now displaying the flow of energy, action, and feelings is the experiencing part that we can now measure in the present sense. But it gives us another way of assessing and developing an appropriate, let's say, learning plan to address inner and outer needs. We'll explain that a little later on. I don't want to get into the roots of everything. I just want to give you a brief brief of what we're talking about here. So the feelings, the sense, the feeling, the focus cycle, whenever you talk to Dr. Slaton or one of his students, they'll always talk to you about the base, which is you teach a person how to sense, to feel, to focus those feelings, because that energy action is conversion of whatever the social cognitive path is interacting through, right? I said interacting through. And those feelings are determined based upon displays of emotion, thought, or reflection, or the combination of any or all three. And we go back to how we looked at the troubled and difficult analysis of a person that's moving through crises. It's similar because you want to understand the human system is a feeling system. So this is one way that you know, because I can talk to you about the sense, the feeling, focus of observing where you are, how you are, and what you're doing to evolve as you're trying to get yourself to maybe become more disciplined, or you're working with someone who lacks a sense of discipline. Well, that's why you want to teach the sense, feeling, focus cycle, because those feelings, right, are connected to how you sense, receive, and focus those feelings of self, brain, because that's the key to the brain's body learning system. There are a lot of people out there that's encountering these difficult things with sense and receive path functioning, and it's not that simple, but you have to teach them from the inside out how to sense, feel, and focus self in relation to the brain. So you want them to have that telepathic interconnection between self and the brain, where they become more aware of what's going on inside of them. And then you have a way of working and examining and using the body as a tool to look at how you are addressing sense and receive path functions as you're trying to get them to receive more information from you. And then you're trying to figure out, well, what's going on? You study the body. That's part of the brain's body learning system, and it's based upon contact. Go back to the community-based learning system. Contact is a step inside the home. Breath of life, contact, right? How you live through contact. So you always want to focus on the home as the base, because that's where the contact originated. So when we talk about problem analysis, it's not the home is the problem, but we look at the home because that's the first place that contact took place outside of a hospital. And then you can continue to accumulate information from that point on that gives you a sense of feel for how that person's self and the brain and the body are or are not coordinating the flow of information, right? Contact is a form of information. As I talk about the conversion, contact may be invisible. Information, we all know, because that's a defined sense of something physical, because your sense path, right, is connected to the environment. The energy is connected to the things you can visually see, the wind blowing leaves, things like that. So the physics of the sense path, right, is what you want to understand. But the contact is actually information flowing through the sense path, right? And what you want to understand is how to transfer that negative energy or those feelings of discomfort into a flow that allows a person to experience the effect of the experience. And that's why I talk to you about the conversion of the experience to knowledge, and that's the base. You want to create that base, and it's an inner sense of feel, because it's a feeling system. So you want to understand that that knowledge base is based upon how you move through your feelings. And that's what we'll keep talking about as we go forward, the brain's body learning system, right? And it's based upon interaction. Why? Because as you see, information has to be transferred. That's the interaction between the sense and the receive path. So when you look at the knowledge base, that means that the conversion process has moved to levels of awareness, memory. We call it, I call it, is emotion, thought, and reflection. That's mental processing that's taking place as you move and you participate in the flow of information and the transfer to levels of knowledge through engagement, which is the experience. some people call it cognitive experience. That's a simpler way to say it. But in the brain-body learning system, because we're not dealing with neuroscience, we're looking at our community-based learning system. They want to figure out how to solve human problems, so we want to make it simple as we relate it back to how a kid or a person lives inside a home and moves through man-made systems, right? Because we're trying to problem solve simultaneously. So another area that I cover in the brain-body learning system is cooperation. Cooperation, because as you become more aware, right? That's because you're practicing. And what you're trying to lead a person to do is practice cooperation. Why? Because when you hurt, right, what's the first thing you stop doing? Displaying signs of care, which means you're less cooperative. So that troubled, difficult, high-need person, right, you want to lead them to understand why they need to choose to cooperate. And that's a perceptual awareness of the benefits of improving sense and receive path functions. We call it self-help. Through self-help, self-research, self-discovery. But it's a practice. And that's what you're trying to teach them, because you can show them how to measure their own performance, which is calm down, collect, and develop confidence, because you can see and examine your body and know that you are performing, because that's your evidence. And so we teach them about the feedback loop from sense to receive path, brain, body, and sense functions. There's a feedback loop that we teach, right? So we go to the next step. The next step, again, is very critical, because you see now I got the brain, body learning systems components alongside the community-based learning system. Those are fields of experience. You experience the home, the school, the neighborhood. That's where the problems take place. So why do we talk about it this way? Because the participation, the brain stops participating when the sense of feel for self is disconnected. And what you're trying to do is lead the person to comprehend the need to choose to accept change. The way they participate in the home, the way they participate in the school, the way they participate in the neighborhood, the way they participate in the workplace. But it's a system. And it's a system that reduces family decline, school failure, delinquency, lack of employable skill sets, and poverty, because they're all related to your experiences of home, school, neighborhood, and workplace. And so if you can improve sense and receive path functioning, then you're talking about leading a person to understand that sense and receive path functions are based upon the choices and decisions that you're actually making. And even if you can't read your feedback loop, or you can't understand the consequence of negative behaviors, you can teach a person to recognize it and then act through it simultaneously, because they're aware of the variables home, school, neighborhood, workplace, network, right? So that's how those two systems come together. Then we have the therapeutic learning support services, right? So the brain-body learning system, just from the brief way I've discussed it so far, you can sense and feel that we're talking about a feeling, hearing, feeling process. And what that means is we're focused upon improving sense and receive path functions that are measurable. It's measurable because when a person begins to show you signs that they care for self in relation to other people, then you know that the sense path is healing, and that those feelings are becoming more open to contact, interaction. That sense and receive path functions, and we always talk through the process, because what people don't understand is that the talk to the brain concept is language development, but it's the way the brain actually communicates, because it's a social organ. So when you talk, the brain lights up, the brain interacts, right? It moves through that information, right? You're creating a knowledge base whether you intended to or not. That's why we talk about teaching a person to talk to the brain. Now, inside education science and the best interest of the child, we've identified diagnostic tools that will help you with your practice. So here we have the brains body learning. But then we have it side by side with the brains body showcase. Community-based learning system are tools, right? But the real process variable is human potential. And developing human potential requires an understanding of the land-based systems. So when you're addressing a person, a client, or a colleague's issues and concerns, you have a systemic way to talk to them about abstract variables when we discuss the brain, but grounded in reality-based living, learning, thinking, and responding places. So everything you do that deals with the brain sensory receive path functionings to improve brain, body, and sense events are relative to the experience of home, school, neighborhood, workplace networks, right? And that's what we're talking about here. So the Brains Body Showcase uses a community-based learning system, but delivers the actual showcase through language development and to improve comprehension of the practice of sensory receive path function. So 5 areas of concern that we're working on that we want to be displayed: talking to the brain, writing to the brain, going to the brain, acting to the brain, performing to the brain, because what we're developing here is a concrete way for a learning community to evolve, understanding how to adjust and adapt to the reality that your brain, body, and senses flow through sensory receive path functions that have to be organized around the way you're able to sense, feel, and focus. So if a kid has ADHD, you want to teach them the sense, feel, and focus cycle step by step. Sense, take them through the process of sensing, then move them to the goal, focus, right? So here's sensing, put a mirror in front of them, and you give me 1 minute of just looking at this girl. Don't blink for 1 minute. Sense, focus, you're working on how they feel the contact and how they interact through it. And you can be taking those simultaneously. So this is what we're talking about. So when you write to the brain, you are communicating. And what are you communicating about? Feelings of self, but in relation to other people, because there's an audience that's involved. So this is a scientific way to improve sensory receive path functions to a learning community that is evolving into a crisis intervention network. You see? Because you can really learn how to address sensory receive path damage through creating learning communities where one teaches another one teaches another one, and then you have a working level of cohesion between people at various levels of engagement inside the learning process, experiencing a sense of feel for self, and the brain ability to talk about that experience. And then more importantly, if you have a behavior disorder and you know how to allow your sense of feel for self to be experienced in relation to your brain, and then understand that your brain then can lead your body, then it's easier for you to stop yourself from hurting other people. Because now you're trying to cooperate with the sense of feel for self, because you're acknowledging how it actually causes you to feel when you do those types of things. No, you have to care. That's what you're teaching. So the brain's body learning system really works with that word care, really works with those words feeling, and really works with those words of healing, because that's what you want a person to be able to do. Now, if they can't, there's your alarm, because what did I say at the beginning? Mild, moderate, severe. And if you go to the other diagnostics, you'll see that it's even simplified. But what we want to know is, we want to teach a kid what severe looks like, so they can understand, no, I'm not that bad, because I'm able to still follow instruction. I don't cause that much trouble in the home. I'm not doing all that in my neighborhood. That's what you want them to begin to rationally deal with and modify, because they're choosing not to live on the edge of self-destruction, the edge of isolation, the edge of withdrawal, because they just don't know how to move through the contact and interaction, the levels of cooperation that allows that forward feed that's built up from the experience of handling that emotion, transferring to thought and reflection, and then the forward feed of the brain to deal with new social cognitive information coming through the sense pattern, all right, which is commingled. That's what you want to do. You want to be commingled, and that's a processing where you're trying to balance brain, body, and sense events, right, because of the knowledge base that's being created through the practice of moving things knowingly through your sense receive path functions to measure the level of performance, and then understanding that we're talking about chemicals, and we're monitoring how those chemicals are moving through you. Energy, action to feelings, right? So I want to thank you. This has been a brief. Look forward to you signing up, or at least take the free consult opportunity and meet with one of our brain body learning consultants. You should do that today, and don't forget to buy the book, because that's the first step is to buy the book. Now, I want to close with this about the book. We took a lot of time and energy. That's why I recommend it, because inside the book, the cover alone, what are you looking at? The brain. So when you talk about the brain's body, it's right in front of you. What are you looking at? The neurologic systems of what? The brain's body, not the body, the brain's body. It's all right there, and it's defined by the way you sense, feel, and focus, and begin to comprehend what you can't see, because you can't see that central nervous system. That's why I tell you the brain is all over your whole body. It's not inside your head. That's why when a person can become paralyzed, it's a disconnect, and the brain can no longer send and transfer information to that part of the body, so that part of the body dies, right? Because the brain is extended throughout your whole body, right? And I'm not getting to that part, but what I want you to understand is that by learning the brain's body, you can then begin to make significant steps in understanding what's actually happening to you and why you do the things that you do. And that's the significance of learning the brain's body, step by step. It's a reality-based learning of learning the brain's body, step by step. It's a reality-based learning system. Thank you. Have a good day.